Hello, my name is Matt Morrison, and this is the first of what I'm planning will be a series of screencasts looking at social media data and analytics. I hope it's going to be a useful experience for me, but more to the point, useful for you. So please bear with me and give me feedback either in the comments or on Twitter, where I'm Mediazar. For this first video, I thought I'd take a look at Twitter's analytics product. Twitter opened this up to the general public last month, but some of us have had it for much longer, and we've had longer to play around with it and get used to it. So I thought it might be good to share some of what I've learned. Along the way, we're going to touch on Excel's pivot tables, one of the most powerful features of Excel, although it's one that's not used nearly often enough. And we'll also take a very quick look at Excel tables. If you're handling data exports from Facebook or Twitter or other platforms, these could really make your life easier as you get used to them. One of the problems we face most often when we're analyzing time series data from the various platforms' data APIs is that Excel may not recognize their server timestamps as dates. So we'll demonstrate how we can use one of Excel's text manipulation tools, the left function, to clean these data. And we'll see how to use the date value function to tell Excel that a field contains a date and not just some random text. And this means we'll touch on how Excel stores date values. And finally, we'll show how to use Excel's if function to label data and enrich the dataset for the specific analysis we want to perform. Every Twitter user now has access to this analytics dashboard. Just point your browser at analytics.twitter.com. If you haven't seen it, please go ahead, put this video on pause and take a look. The dashboard gives you access to lots of data on your own tweets. You can see in one place how many clicks and retweets and replies they're receiving, and importantly for our purposes here, how many impressions they're receiving. So it makes interesting reading, and I'd encourage you to explore it, but it has some pretty key limitations for the social media professional. For one thing, like many platform dashboards, it tends to lead with the big exciting numbers. In this case, the summary shows the total impressions over the past 28 days. Totals are very interesting, but they're too easily affected by things like increased user activity to be useful for planning and tracking. So if we're going to compare like with like, we need to find some more consistent measure. Some kind of average is always useful, but we're not going to find that here. Another problem is that it doesn't let us break the data down by weeks or months. In most professional situations, we need to see how one time period compares with another so that we can make projections, identify seasonal patterns, and so on. And the final challenge is that there are two very different kinds of tweets reported here. Some of you will know this already, but not everyone does, so please bear with me. Let's look at the difference between a standard tweet and a reply, particularly who each tweet will be shown to. This is a tweet. It will appear in the timelines of everyone who follows me. Whether they see it or not depends on factors such as how assiduously they are checking their tweets and how many other people they're following. This, on the other hand, is a reply. I checked with Twitter, who confirmed that it's always called a reply, even if it's the beginning of a conversation. A reply, as you can see, starts with someone's screen name. It's addressed to them and more or less them alone. It'll be shown on their timeline and also in their mentions feed. Depending on their settings, they may receive some kind of alert that their name has been mentioned. But a reply won't be displayed on my followers' timelines unless they are also following the person to whom I'm addressing the tweet. It will be visible on my profile page under the Tweets and Replies tab, should anyone bother to check, but that's not really how people use Twitter. So what all this means is that most replies receive far fewer impressions than standard tweets. And if, like me or lots of brands, you spend a lot of time replying to people, then those replies are going to skew your data very heavily, leading you to underestimate your impressions per tweet. And that's going to be a disaster when it comes to assessing and planning your Twitter activity. So that's what we're going to look at in this screencast. That's a very long introduction, so let's get on with the demonstration. First of all, we need to export our data as a CSV by clicking the Export Data button just here. And let's open that in Excel. You can see that there are lots more detail here. Retweets, replies, favourites, also where in the tweet the recipients clicked. It's not easy to read, so let's tidy it up a bit. I'm going to convert this data range to an Excel table. Tables offer several advantages over data ranges, but for me the main reason is they make data and formulae simpler and faster to handle. If you haven't tried it yet, I'd seriously recommend giving it a go. So I'm heading up to the Insert menu and selecting Table. There you go. It's immediately easier to read. Let's expand this time column. Twitter has formatted it as a server timestamp. Excel, though, doesn't recognize the format, so it's treating it as just a simple string of text characters. It doesn't actually know that the column holds quantitative data. So I need to change that because I want to be able to summarize this by year and month. I'm inserting a new column called Date, and I'm going to take the date part of this timestamp by selecting the first 10 characters of each field in the column with the left function, like this. And because I've formatted the data as a data table, the formula I've entered is automatically filled down the column, and any changes I make will also be automatically filled down. Now the problem is the left function treats everything as text, and it spits out text too. So Excel still doesn't know that this is a date. You may have noticed the column is left aligned. That's a pretty good sign that Excel is treating the data it contains as just text. So I'll have to be more explicit. The date value function here takes text that looks like a date and converts it to a number that Excel can understand. Excel stores all of its dates as the number of days since January the 1st, 1900. So the 15th of September here is 40,435 days after that date. And it's very useful for Excel, but it's more or less illegible to me, so I'm going to go ahead and reformat that column. Now I'm going to add a column called Year and use Excel's Year function to calculate the year of each date. That'll make organizing my data a little simpler later on. For the purpose of this analysis, as we said, I want to be able to compare tweets where I'm talking to somebody using an @reply and a more standard broadcast tweet. So I'm going to create a column called Type and enter a simple test. Is the first character of the tweet an @ sign? If yes, then it's a reply. If no, then it's a standard tweet. Now that I've added the new date, year and type columns, I can perform my simple analysis. I'm going to use a pivot table to do this. They may seem a bit hard to use at first, but once you get used to them, they're a really quick way of summarizing and querying your data. You can create a pivot table by selecting a cell anywhere in the data range or table that you want to use as the source data and then accessing the pivot table from the data menu or the ribbon. Clicking OK opens a new worksheet with the pivot table builder already open. I want to summarize the impressions by date, so the first thing I do is I drag the impressions into the value box here. The pivot table will always try to summarize the values in a field by totaling them with the sum function. Much of the time that's what you want, things like total clicks, total sales. But today I want a measure of central tendency, the mean impressions per tweet. So for this I want to use Excel's average function. I don't actually need this degree of precision. It just makes things hard to read and it doesn't really add any value. So let's just format that number so it rounds to the nearest integer. Now I want to summarize these by year and month, so let's drag the year and date fields into the row labels box. There. That's the pivot table built. Now let's put it to use. First of all, I'm going to group the dates by month by clicking on the Group button in the ribbon here. See how useful the pivot table is? The column now shows the average impressions received by my tweets each month. Finally, I want to compare the results based on whether the tweets were replies or not. Remember, replies aren't seen by as many people as my normal tweets, but how much are they skewing my results? I'm going to drag the type field I created earlier into the column labels box. This immediately splits the data out into reply and standard columns. And looking here at the table summary row, we can see that the replies have a huge effect on my average. So there you have it. We've seen how we can download data from the Twitter Analytics platform, and how we can clean and enrich those data for analysis, and how we can use pivot tables to summarize and analyze those data. I do hope that it's been useful, and as I say, this is my first attempt at screencasting, and it's taken me much longer to pull together than I'd expected, so I've learned something at least. But I would really be very grateful for any feedback you'd like to leave, either in the YouTube comments or on Twitter, where you can reach me at Mediazar. Thank you very much.